Awesome. How we doing? Good? It's been a good day already, right? Good to see everybody this morning. As Adam said, we're gonna kind of land the plane on this series called The Best Ever, and it's my job today to sort of tackle the topic of the best family ever. And whether or not you're here today and you particularly enjoy your family, or you would classify your family as the best, I'm glad you showed up today, seriously. And those moms that showed up today, once again, happy Mother's Day to you. And those of you that showed up because of your mom, right? You know who you are. Thanks for showing up for mama. Your mom's happy you're sitting next to her today. And speaking of showing up, that's where I want to begin today. I want to talk about the big idea of showing up for your family, okay? And so now whether you're here today and you're a parent, we all have kids in our lives, right? Some of them older than others, right? Some of them brand new. And if you care about the future of the world, or at least the future of those kids that you're connected to in your everyday life, I hope you would agree with me that we desire to make a difference, especially with this next generation, right? The older we get, the more we desire to make a difference, or in other words, to have influence. Somebody say influence. 1, 2, 3. Come on, say a little louder. 1, 2, 3. Influence. Yeah, it's a big word, and I hope today to kind of bridge a gap between the idea of showing up for your family and this whole idea of influence. It's an awesome responsibility that you and I have to steward the influence that we have over the next generation. And here's what I've learned after 20 years of working with the next generation and trying to raise 4 kids myself. Here's what I've learned. Your best chance to have influence in someone's life is to actually show up, right? I mean, listen, if you want significant influence in a life, whether they're kids or adults, there's something required of us, right? Like we actually have to show up, you know? You gotta show up. And I'd like to suggest today that there really is no more important place to show up than in your own home. Or for those kids that you know that you're connected to, maybe not your own kids, there's no more important place to show up than in the life of a kid. But there's a problem, right? Especially within the context of our homes. If you think about it, it's a pretty significant problem. It's a problem that keeps some of us, if not all of us from time to time, showing up, especially in a strategic kind of a way. Here's the problem. The problem is influence in the home is not always instantly gratifying, right? You know what I mean? Like, in other words, we can't really see immediate results a lot of times when we're working with kids in our homes, especially in our own families. Like think about your toddlers for a second, right? Like a toddler isn't gonna necessarily thank you for disciplining them today, right? Like they're probably not gonna thank you for teaching them how to use the potty. True? Like they're probably not gonna rise up and call you blessed for feeding them today or wiping their snotty nose. True? It doesn't work like that. At least not with the toddlers that I've come to, try to raise myself. But if you think about it, a middle schooler is not that much different, right? Like your middle schooler, they may say thanks, mumble it under their breath for you buying those ridiculously expensive tennis shoes. But they're probably not gonna take you out to coffee and hand you a note and say, here's all the ways that you're affecting my future. Just don't think that way, right? But here's the thing. Chances are you and I, someone showed up in our life even though they didn't see immediate results. At least that's how it was for me. My mom and my dad and my coaches and my teachers and my leaders continue to show up in my life even though they weren't getting much out of me. And chances are the same as with you. If you took a trip down memory lane and thought of the people that showed up in your life, they showed up even when there wasn't much results. So, to take care of the problem, we may need to change the way that we think about this big idea, influence, especially when it comes to the next generation. So here's what I'd like to suggest today. The best kind of influence is personal. Personal. You know what I mean by that? Like influence, it happens best when you get personal with someone, like face to face, right where they are, right? Like it happens best within the context of personal relationship, right? Built on deep like love and care and concern for someone, right? I mean, think about how Jesus stepped into our world and got personal with people. Right? Like that's why Jesus said to Zacchaeus, remember the story, wee little man Zacchaeus? That's why he said, hey, I'm coming to your house today. We're gonna hang out. This is why Jesus said to Peter, Andrew, and James, he's like, come on, follow me. We're gonna fish for people now, right? It's why Jesus said to the woman at the well, hey, it's okay. I know you don't have a husband. It's okay. You see, Jesus was showing up for people in the places that they were, in the mess of life. He just was showing up in the phases of life that they were in. He showed up in a super personal way, time and time again, not just with the stories I shared with you, but time and time again throughout the gospel. He showed up. You see, Jesus was earning influence. He was earning a different kind of influence than some of us tend to think about, including myself. See, sometimes we get confused about this word influence. At least I do. We have some misconceptions regarding influence. Let's talk about a few of them today. The first is this. We think if we have power, we have influence. You know what I mean? Like that may work for your 3-year-old, right? Right? Like you can make them do things because you're older than them and you have power over them. But how many realize that your 3-year-old turns quickly into a 13-year-old, like I've got one, and that's when the real power struggle begins? You know what I'm talking about? You see, the type of power or influence that you and I have over our kids today may not be the same forever. In fact, I guarantee it won't be the same forever, especially as they get older. The second misconception I think we have sometimes is that we think if we have success, we have influence, right? Those of you that lived a little while, you know what this is about, right? Like as a parent, you've got some credibility outside your home. You know what I mean? Like you may have a really great job and you've built like an impressive portfolio and you've got like a really strong resume and like maybe you lead a sales team and you consult with people and you manage a staff like every single week, right? You're a smart and seasoned leader, except in your home for some reason, right? Like people listen to you, right? People listen to you. Everyone that is except for your 16-year-old daughter, right? Like you're kind of like, why don't you listen to me? People think I'm smart. When I go to work, they think I'm smart and I'm not smart here, right? I'm successful. But I'd like to suggest that the reason that your 16-year-old daughter might not listen to you is because you're not showing up in a way that actually is translating influence in her world. The third misconception that I want to talk about today is if we have positional authority, we have influence. You know what I mean? Like you're in charge, right? Like you're the boss of your home. Like you should listen to me. It's Mother's Day. You should listen to me, right? Right? Like you're the matriarch of your family. You're like the TSA of the home, right? I'm the boss. Sometimes we think people should do what we say, not even because we're right, but because we think we've been given the right to tell them what to do. Man, I have bought into this misconception in my home time and time again. I don't know what it looks like in your home, but for me, it's like I'm your dad. That's my role. You should listen to me because I'm your dad, and I'm your dad because I'm your dad. How many have seen that backfire in your home like it has in mine? Yeah. So there's some misconceptions about influence, at least that I've learned, especially with this next generation. We begin to think that that power equals influence or success equals influence or position equals influence. Not necessarily so, right? So let's ask the question today, where does healthy influence begin? I think it starts with trust. Trust. Now I get it, man, influence based on power and position and success, like that's the easy stuff, right? Like they're pretty common, but I'd like to suggest that it's pretty temporary, right? Those of you that have lived life a little longer and you've got kids out of the home, sometimes those type of influence don't last very long, right? But trust, that's the kind of influence that's earned over time, right? And this is what I've come to realize with working with the next generation, and like I said, trying to raise 4 kids of my own. This is what I've come to realize, especially when it comes to the next generation. Influence needs to be earned. If we want to have influence in our son's life, or in our nephew's life, or if you want to have influence in your stepdaughter's life, we have to learn to care enough to keep showing up in a personal way, right where they're at. So, there's this guy in the Bible, his name is Nehemiah. Maybe you've heard of him before. Nehemiah. And Nehemiah is famous in the Christian world for leading the charge of like rebuilding this massive wall around the city of Jerusalem. And the reason this wall was so important is that it represented stability, it represented protection for the city. It represented the city's strength. But like any, construction process, a little bit like the road construction out here, it doesn't happen without some issues arising, right? So there was this critical stage in the construction when they were sort of like halfway done with the wall, and things were just kind of starting to get a little bit crazy. Like everything started to kind of pile up, and people were getting tired. There were threats and cynicism and skepticism, and rumors were sort of swirling around the city. You see, morale was starting to shift. There was an enemy waiting right outside the city gates, sort of intimidating them, right? The people of Jerusalem were sort of starting to freak out a little bit, right? Like they were all kind of filled with fear. But then Nehemiah, he did something genius. Nehemiah sort of just kind of rallied the families and the parents to sort of take on a new level of responsibility that day. This is how he described the scene. I want us to read it in Nehemiah chapter 4, starting in verse 13. Therefore I, Nehemiah, stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. Verse 14 says, after I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families. Fight for your families. Pathways, can you get a picture with me for a moment? Can you imagine the emotion of this moment? Like everybody knows that the enemy is planning to attack, right? Like everybody's ready to kind of wave the white flag and give up and throw in the towel, right? So Nehemiah just simply kind of organizes them by families. And what does he do? He goes ahead and just kind of posts them and puts them in the gaps in the half-finished wall, and he says, remember what you're fighting for. Remember what you're fighting for. In that one move, Nehemiah just simply recasted the vision for the wall in a way that became super personal that day. You see, it was no longer about a city without a wall. It was no longer about the enemy at the gates. Nehemiah made it about their sons and their daughters. He made it about their homes. Come on, let's all be clear here what's at stake. When Nehemiah rallied the parents, it was a game changer, right? Like when Nehemiah positioned the influencers at the gate, it was like game on, right? And here's what I want you to notice today, especially parents that are here, And especially moms on your special day, this is so interesting to me. When the parents stood in the gaps, or the influencers stood in the gaps, the enemy decided not to attack. Maybe it's because they knew that when moms and dads fight, when they fight differently when they're fighting for their own kids, right, Mama Bears? You know what I mean? Like when you're looking at the faces of your family, you end up facing the enemy with like a different kind of passion, right? Like a different kind of grit. Now, some of you know the rest of the story of the rebuilding of the wall. Of course, it went on to be built, and Jerusalem went on to thrive and be the epicenter, and all was saved because the influencers showed up. Can I ask you a question this morning, man? Who can you show up for? Who can you stand in the gap for? Or maybe a more challenging question for some of us today is, who have you missed showing up for in the past? And in this moment, you feel some regret, you feel some pain, listen, you may not be able to go back and show up like you wished you had many, many years ago, but you can start today. Like maybe you need to make that phone call today. Maybe you need to show up this week at somebody's home of a relationship, a family relationship that's gone tattered and torn, and you're just gonna show up and you're gonna take a step to make it right. Maybe this week you just need to show up. Or maybe for you, you're sitting here and you sense the enemy on the doorstep of your family looking for a way to penetrate. Man, I've been there the last couple years pushing the enemy back. I've been fighting for my family. Maybe you're here today and you sense the enemy literally trying to take out your family. Maybe you sense the enemy like on the doorstep of your kids' hearts. You see them wandering and making some wrong choices. Man, our spiritual enemy wants to go after your greatest asset. And parents, for most of us, that's our kids. And maybe for some of us, maybe we just need to stop fighting with our family and fighting for our family. Maybe we just need to stop fighting each other in our family and start fighting for each other. Maybe we need to stop yelling at each other and start praying for each other. And can I encourage you this week to take some time and just show up? And I don't know what that might look like for you, and let's take some time to show up for the next generation. Maybe just show up at bedtime with your kids with a personal story. Maybe show up at dinner time with just kind of a personal conversation around the dinner table. Maybe you need to show up at drive time on the way to school with just a simple prayer and an encouraging word as you look at your kids through the rearview mirror. Just show up. Let's go ahead and let's grab on to the influence that we may have earned, and let's push the enemy back, and let's fight for our families in this next generation, okay? Listen, we want to help you as a church. We do. And I want you to just hear some real super practical ways today that we as a church are fighting for your family, specifically your kids. We want to stand in the gap as you're standing in the gap for your kids. And we want to kind of fight for this next generation as a whole. And so I've invited our children's pastor, Nate Feetzer, and our brand new youth pastor, Ben Carlson, to join me just for the last, 10 minutes or so of our time together. And we just want to get real practical and talk about what this looks like here at our church. So would you welcome Nate and Ben as they come and join me here, please? Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks. So yeah, like I said, guys, I want us to get super practical about some of the ways that we help these parents and those that care about kids in general fight for the next generation. Because there is a real enemy standing trying to penetrate the hearts of this next generation. And so before we dive into that a whole lot, this is Ben, our brand new youth pastor, everybody. Come on. Yeah. We've been praying for God's right person to take us into the next season, and Ben is here. So before we dive into some of the ways that we do this, talk to us about kind of who you are, your passion for student ministry, and kind of why you're so excited to be here, because we're excited you're here. Come on.
Hi. How you guys doing?
Hey, good. Microphone check.
Check 1, 2, check.
Let's try this one just for fun here.
Hi. Better. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Truly, I love the authenticity that Pathways brings. You guys are super relational, and I dig it. I really, really do.
Yeah.
Laura and I are in love with that culture. In all honesty, that's what brought us here, truly. But we wanted to thank you guys so much for just welcoming in to your family. We feel at home. We truly do. This is home to us. We're from Minnesota, so I know I'm going to get booed for this, but Skol Vikes.
Uh-oh. Come on. Give them a chance, everybody. Lean in here. What's up? You're scowling.
All right. We met at summer camp, and we have a huge, huge heart for students. We truly do. I'm a big fan of sports. I love anything competitive, wakeboarding, fishing, football, obviously. I'm there. I dig that. I've heard a lot this week that I look a lot like Chase. I could see that. I also get a lot that I sound like Seth Rogen, so I know hard feelings if you pick up on that. That's fine. That's all good. But like Chase, I'm excited to get this momentum, building on the momentum that's already existing in our environment, truly. Having some fun, building relationships, and deepening those relationships with each other, and of course, God.
Yeah.
Seriously. You see, guys, I grew up in a small group. And as a student, I had a lot of baggage. Anybody have baggage in here? It's okay.
Yeah.
You can raise your hand. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's a safe place. I have baggage too. As a student, I had a lot of baggage, and I really wrestled about my faith and God and doubt. And it wasn't until I got connected to a small group where I just felt heard, you know? And my small group gave me the emotional freedom to unload that baggage, and they stood in the gap for me. To this day, I'm still connected to my small group. We still check in. Yeah, it's over Skype, but we still check in. And that really resonates with me, guys. I'm getting emotional. But here at Pathways, we have high quality leaders, especially in Pathways students, Pathways kids. And these, especially in Pathways students, these guys have been carrying the ministry without an official leader for quite some time. Right. And it's because they believe in what we're doing and where we're going as a church. See, these guys are a dedicated team, and they deserve our recognition. So if you see them out in the hallway or at a grocery store, just give them a side hug and just tell them how much you appreciate them, truly. Yeah, I know, I'm like brand new, 8 seconds, right? I don't know anything yet. I totally get that. But what I do know is I want to get to know all of you. I want to connect with you, to hear your stories, to really just know what Pathways is, So my email is going to flash on the screens, and I invite you to reach out to me, to connect with me. I love coffee, if you don't know that already. I'm a big fan of just getting to know your stories. So feel free to just connect with me.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ben. Guys, I am not only super pumped that he's here, but I want you to recognize that heart to build on what has already been, that foundation that so many youth pastors that have come before have built on that idea of the circle. And one of our distinctives as a church is that we really do have a comprehensive strategy from age 2 all the way to us older folks in here of building a solid circle. And because we realize that's where we really can help heart change happen, and we make it personal. And so man, I'm pumped about your strongest passion. So we've got 8 seconds over here, and we've got 8 years of ministry here at Pathways. This is Nate Feetzer, everybody. And yeah, you can, yeah. Nate's been on our team for 8 years, and just about a year and a half ago took the reins of our children's pastor role here at Pathways. And I asked Nate to share some of the real practical ways that we as a church, and we specifically in our Next Gen area, make it personal for kids. But talk specifically in the preschool phase and the elementary phase, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I couldn't agree with Ben more than what, in regards to what he said in regards to small groups. The small groups are the basis for our ministry within our church. And the reason is because when you're in a small group, you get to be known and you get to be loved. And it's in those moments that we can make the greatest amount of impact. Think of us as adults. When we're known, when we're loved, we get personal. We open up, we talk about things that are closest to our hearts. And it's the same way with kids. And so when we help those kids to be feel known and loved within our environment, we're able to minister to the heart specifically. When they feel known and loved, we're able to specifically take Scripture and make it personal to them. You know, a couple weeks ago, we redesigned our elementary service to do everything under blacklight. It was so much fun, from worship to our Bible story to our small group time. It was a blast. The kids were literally glowing. Like, they had neon on, their smiles were glowing. It was incredible. But the big idea that weekend was the fact that we serve a God that's bigger than our biggest questions. And so once I got done with my challenge, I encouraged them to get in their small groups and actually ask some of those questions. What are some of the questions that they had? And my heart broke reading some of those questions. You know, questions like, does dad love me? Why don't I get to see my dad very often? Why did mom and dad get a divorce? Why is it so hard for me to make friends? Big questions, big questions. Why did God create spiders? Like, really big questions. And it's in those moments, like I said, that we get to speak to their heart. We get to take Scripture, make it real to them. We get to pray with them. We may not have all the answers, but we serve a God that does have the answers. And so we can connect them so that they can grow in their relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, that doesn't happen outside of the small group. That's why small groups are so important. And when I say small groups, I'm talking about groups of 8 to 10 kids per volunteer. Right now, church, we're at like 15 to 23 kids per volunteer at Pathways. We need to change that. Last week, I led a 4th and 5th grade group, 19 4th and 5th graders. Yeah, I was ready to pull out my hair by the end of it. And I can tell you, the sad part is I went home a little discouraged because I know that there was 4th and 5th graders in that group that didn't feel known and loved to the point, or they didn't have that personal relationship to the point that they could share the things that were closest to their hearts. Yeah. Valuable, valuable. Last week we had a 3-year-old room, 29 3-year-olds with 2 volunteers. 2. That's 15 per person. Insane. We need to fix this, church. We need to fix this. You know, Pastor Chris, you were talking about influencers, standing in those gaps. Everybody in this room is an influencer. Yeah. Whether you like it or not, you're influencing at some level somebody. And I would encourage you, no matter what stage of life you might be in, whether you're a mom, whether you're a grandma, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're a student, no matter what stage of life you're in, you can make a difference. You can make an influence in a kid's life. And I would encourage you to connect with me or Ben or Pastor Chris. We'd love to get you connected to our team so that you can help us out in that regard.
Yeah, man, thanks. And I hope you hear this. You guys, if you've been here recently, you know the need. You've seen the need. Some of you parents that drop your 3-year-olds off in that room, right? But listen, it's way more than a need. It's the why. It's the why behind. We can literally make it way more personal for your kids if you respond to this need, right? And so thanks for doing that. And listen, Nate, talk to us. Well, I shared with our congregation about this big idea of fighting for our family. And let's get super practical just for a couple minutes. What are some of those tools? Maybe even like a weapon? Because what good's a fight without a weapon, right? So what are some of those resources that are available to parents?
Yeah, as Chris was saying, statistically, we get about 25 to 40 hours with your kid every year. Parents, you guys get 3,000 hours with your kids. You guys are the primary spiritual voice in your kid's life. And so we want to provide you with tools that you can go into that fight with. And so we have a great resource called the Parent Q app. It's a free download. It's available on Android or Apple. I would encourage you to download it. What that does is it pings you throughout the week. Here's something you can say to your child. Here's a scripture you can read to your child. Here's an activity that you can do together. Here's something specifically for you on how to grow as a parent. There's so many resources within that app. I just want to encourage you. It's an incredible tool. Also, right inside our children's ministry area, we have a new parent resource center. It's up on the right, it's up on the wall, and it's got a plethora of information in there from what we're talking about on the weekends here at Pathways Church, but also there's information on how to have conversations around faith, how to have conversations around sexual identity, what to do during the summer. Your kids are about to get out of school and they're going to be home all day. What are some ideas and things that you can do with your family to build those deeper relationships? So I'd encourage you to check that out as well. Also, in as much as we're talking about making it personal this morning, Ben, Pastor Chris, and myself, we want you to know that we're here for you as well. We want to make it personal to you. So if you see us in the hall, or you need something, you need prayer, you need to talk something out, feel free to reach out to us. We're in the halls all the time. You can call us at the church office, email us, whatever way works best for you. I want you to know that we're here for you, and we love getting to know you and connect with you. So
Yeah, man, I hope you see and sense and feel and are even moved by the hearts of these guys and our team. We're excited about the future. And as we get to partner together as parents and those that love kids and those that are connected to kids, those that are influencers, we all are. And so would you show your love and appreciation for Nate and Ben today? Thanks, guys.